The goal in your life is not to figure out how to be comfortable in your mental prisons, but to realize that you have the keys to set yourself free. Hey everybody, welcome to the program on how to be mesmerizing, and today we have another amazing guest, and I am really excited about this one. In fact, I've been thinking about it all week. Jason Hewlett is with us today. Yay, Jason! Now this guy, he is a Hall of Fame speaker and an amazing presenter, and he talks about how to be a leader and how to find your signature moves. This guy is really good. What he also brings to the table though, he is just a really talented guy. He's a musician and he's like comedian and entertainer, and you know, the people that have seen him have said it's the most amazing thing how you take somebody who's such a great entertainer but then also can really bring it home and cause you to create some pretty outstanding shifts in your culture and with your leadership team, sustainable results that you'll take home and you'll use as a parent, as a spouse. And the ability to be able to do both, to be an entertainer and an impactful motivational speaker, is pretty unique. And Jason has pulled it off. So Jason, welcome to the program.
Tim, that was like the best intro ever, man. Thank you very much. Honored to be here.
Yeah, well, it's our pleasure to have you. So, all right, so let me jump in real quick here. I got a couple questions for you that I've been excited to hear. So how did you, because a big part of your program is finding your signature moves, right? So could you explain what that means and how you found yours?
So when I was a kid, and I share this in my speech because it's a big part of it, I just talk about how when I was a kid, I found out by others making fun of me that I had a big mouth. So they were like, hey, I got on the school bus, they were like, your mouth is huge. And I was like, you're right, and then they said, well, you know, you're a weird kid. And I became known as the kid with the big mouth. And it wasn't until I went to the dentist that I realized I could control things on my face that made it so that I could make people laugh with my face. So for those listeners, they might want to check out your YouTube channel for some of this stuff that I could do with my face. But I found out early on that I could do these bizarre things, right? And it became known as my signature moves. Everyone would always say, do that thing with your face. So I do that thing with my mouth and my face. And then I realized I could do voices and noises and things that made people laugh. And then it became stories and comedy. Yes. And then I realized I could infuse inspiration and actually move people to think differently a bit. And the next thing I know, Tim, I'm able to help others discover by this process called identify, clarify, magnify, that they could realize their own signature moves. And I do that in my presentation by bringing in impressions of other artists and musicians through the years that are legends and how they've used theirs to be, you know, to be captivating, to be mesmerizing, to be awesome on stage, and that all of us have something like that. So that's what I teach. And it's called the Promise to become a legendary leader and discover your signature moves.
So good. Now that is a real gift to be able to do that, because a lot of people ride on their own natural talent, but you can't teach personality, right? So what you were doing visually with your face and your mouth and all that was hilarious, right? And you learn to use something that, as we all do, right? Something that maybe hurt our feelings or that caused us pain, and then all of a sudden we learn how to use it and you turn it into a superpower, which you have obviously done. But then to teach people how to find that in themselves is a whole other bag. And you've been able to do that. So can you give me a couple ideas of how you help people find or at least recognize their signature strengths?
Yeah, of course. And I call the process identify, clarify, magnify. It's a very simple way to remember it.
Yeah.
So let's say you're trying to identify what yours are. What I tell people, rather than trying to pinpoint it to one thing, because that's really tough. You know, if I said to you, Tim, what's your one thing? You'd be like, I probably have more than one. I don't know. And so I say, okay, let's flip the funnel and let's go for 100. I want you to just write down every talent, gift, skill, even things you want to be good at. And whether it's just, whether it's you're funny, you're a musician, you're a poet, maybe you're devoted, maybe you're thoughtful, maybe you're creative, whatever it is, analytical, just start writing it down. And then you might get to about 20 or 30 and be like, I'm done. No, you're not. Go unpack that which you wrote. So if I write on there artist for myself, like I'm an artist,
Yeah.
what does artist really mean? Artist might mean that I'm a satirist or a parodist. I can write parodies really well. I can do comedy. I can do drama. I can write music on the piano. And so then you start to really see that there are 100 things you have. And then I say, whittle it down to your top 10 that you really identify with. Just go through and circle the 30 or 40 you like, and then whittle it down to the top 10. So my list might go something like, I'm an entertainer. I'm a very entertaining guy. I've been known to be an inspiring guy, and I'm a family man, and I'm faithful. And then this list of top 10 becomes my identified list that I consider to be who I am. And so now I have my list. And then I say, that's your identify part. So now put that in your pocket, and now go ask somebody you trust. Go ask your friends, your parents, your peers. When we do this in the workspace, it's really funny because you get a bunch of people that are working on a team, and they start saying, hey, what do you see in me that I don't see in myself? What are my strengths? Yeah. Man, it is the most fascinating practice, because people will point out to you stuff you don't even realize you do, and you don't even realize you're good at. And that's the clarify process, asking people what they think you're good at. I've even suggested people email their former mentors or even their family members and say, hey, I'm going through this process of clarifying what makes me unique. What do you see in me? Just give me 5 or 6 things. People will get these crazy emails that change their life. And then what happens, Tim, is they take the clarified listings of all their peers and all these ideas that they pull out of their pocket the top 10, identify, and man, the overlap is beautiful. Yeah. There are things that they never realized that they've done their entire life that makes them who they are. And that becomes their signature moves. And they've used them already, but they don't realize that it's their superpowers, not only confirmed from their own mind, but from other people. And that's how they can then say, identify, clarify, now I'm going to go magnify it to the world and keep my promise to share it.
Oh my gosh. That was awesome. Brother Jason, preaching on. That was great. All right. So everybody that's listening or watching this, Jason just laid some golden nuggets down for you. I think this is a great activity for all of us, to focus on, because sometimes we focus a little too much on what we think are our weaknesses, and we need to focus a little bit more on what makes us who we really are, and getting that outside feedback, asking some friends or some people that care about you, what are some things you see in me? I think that's so beautiful. One of the best, I did a post one time, and it wasn't on, I was just putting something on Facebook, and it was like, when people think of you, what words come to mind to describe you? Because you want to live intentionally and you want to act in a way that would cause people to think of you in the way that you would want them to. And so, like, for example, if I put Tim Shurr down, what do people think, right? And I wasn't asking that as a question, but when I posted it, all of a sudden, I got like the most engagement ever. And all these people were saying all these things about, leader and coach and mentor and caring. And I was like verklempt. I'm like, oh my gosh, it was so nice. And I wasn't expecting it. And it was really, it was very powerful. And so I agree with you how impactful that can be to get that outside feedback as well. It really can affirm you. Sometimes you just need one other person to believe in you for you to believe in yourself. So
right on. Yeah, man. And that's a great practice as well, posting on Facebook or LinkedIn or something. And I mean, this isn't necessarily to just get a pat on the head. This
right.
is to help you go to another level of productivity, of engagement, of connection, and building relationships. I mean, I remember my list was kind of sheepish the first time I did this. It was like, I'm a follower, and I'm a nice guy, and just kind of this this stuff where we're not used to confidently stating that which makes us who we are, because we've been told, hey, you know, you got to be humble, you have to be this or that, you have to focus on your weaknesses and fix those. And then I went to my wife and I said, hey, what do you really see that I'm, you know, that makes me who I am? I mean, you married me because I'm funny, right? I'm a funny guy and I'm so silly or whatever. And my wife was like, no, I mean, your funny stuff was engaging to me and it was impressive, but you're like the most thoughtful person I've ever met. You know, like you see things in people and you point it out to them and you tell them. I've never met a guy like that goes up to a woman in front of me and says, you look so beautiful in your pregnant self, you know. And she said, men don't say that to women, but you do. And it's not threatening. It's just who you are. I love that about you. And I was like, hey, I guess I do that. So it's helpful to have them point it out, because now I can say, how can I do that every day to make a difference in other people's lives? I'm grateful that I now have this process created of identify, clarify, magnify to help other people do it themselves.
That's a beautiful example, Jason. I really love that. And yeah, it's, I mean, people can feel very vulnerable in those situations saying, you know, do you see anything good in me? You know, and of course, then the other side is people who, you know, can come across, we're like, well, of course you can, right? I mean, I'm awesome, which is great. But because a lot of times when we think about getting feedback, we think that the feedback we're asking for is because we're doing something wrong, right? But you can get great feedback that helps you to continue to feel strong with, you know, with who you are as well. And you just got to have the courage to ask. And if somebody gives you some feedback, you know, on what you love about me, and then is there something that you wish I could do more, you know, then that's, you know, another opportunity to be able to learn and grow. So you keep showing up and being intentional and validating who you are, because so many of us are afraid to be ourselves. We think that we have to be somebody else in order to be loved and accepted, and that's a drain, right? So many of us are disconnected these days, and so this is a wonderful practical way to be able to start to get clear on what makes you who you are, right? Yeah. And that's special.
And I would advise anybody that does this with a spouse, a partner, somebody they live with, a child or whatever, that, yeah, this is an activity of positivity. We're not going into the, what are my weaknesses? What can I improve upon? Just quite yet. This is just simply a help me to understand what you see in me, who I am. And if they start going kind of dark, you know, then you say, that's for another conversation. That's the next level of, you know, let's talk self-improvement, self-awareness. But right now, we're trying to just figure out, what are my signature moves? What do I bring to the table naturally that makes me who I am? And yeah, man, once you get that down and you figure out your signature moves, then you can come back and say, okay, I'm open to this feedback conversation. What can I improve? When my wife and I have had that type of conversation, I mean, that's when you got to be careful, because you have to be really, you know, trusting and ready to hear some hard stuff. But that's when you take your level of living to a completely different level, when you say, hey, what are the roles that I play and how can I do them better in our home? And then you can do that on your team at work as well, with the manager, with the executive team, with the people you work with. You know, if you're working in a cubicle opposite someone else and you're like, I have all these talents and skills, am I using them? Now you have an open conduit for the conversation to say, yeah, I'm not seeing you do that as much as you could be. And how do we make sure that we utilize the strengths of each other, the signature moves that make us who we are? Man, productivity in the workspace just skyrockets when you have that open ability to create and not be stamped out with all your ideas, and utilizing what makes you who you are.
Yep, I 100% agree. And I like that a lot. You got to build people up, right? And then you can give them feedback, but, you know, and on what you call maybe the other personal development stuff, but we've got to build people up and validate people, help people feel cared for, and show them, you know, that we appreciate who they are and what they bring to the table before we ever start thinking about, you know, the other stuff, which is what people tend to focus on. We tend to focus on the other parts of it instead of building each other up. We think, well, we got to talk about the problems that we have. And often in that space, people aren't going to even hear it or be open to changing unless you've already created the trust in the beginning, that psychological safety in the beginning.
Well said.
Yeah. Well, I'm just, repeating you. So, so, so one of the things that I noticed, I want to ask you about this because I'm just excited about it, because you've had some experiences that most people just would not have, right? And so you had the opportunity to do a tour through the Middle East to support our troops, right? And you went to Kuwait and you went to Afghanistan and in Africa. Can you kind of walk us through what that was like for you when you first are getting on a plane and going and showing up in Kuwait, for example? And what was that like?
So that's a great question. And I never got to serve in the armed forces or anything, even though I totally would have. I took a different path, obviously. And so when the opportunity came along, it was almost like, hey, we're hopping on a plane in a couple weeks. We've got to go now. And I later found out because other entertainers and speakers would not go over there at that time. It was too dangerous. And this was in the summer of 2014, so it was a few years back. Yeah. But this was at the most dangerous time in Afghanistan. And however, we went to Kuwait and all around as well. Getting on the plane, this was scary because you can see my family behind me on this picture. Mm-hmm. My family that was about the time I went. They were young, my children, we have 4 kids. And I remember thinking, what if I die? What will they remember me for? Or what's going to happen? This is a scary thing. I'm going to an active war zone to go and perform and speak and inspire other people. I don't know if I'm making it back. And so I put together a bunch of things that would allow it so that if I didn't come back, they would still know who I am. I recorded videos like this. I wrote them letters for significant moments in their life. I put it away in a safe, told my wife about it, and just said, if I don't come back, I have a lot of stuff prepared for when, and she was freaking out, like, what are you saying, And I got the life insurance, got a better policy, all that stuff. That's kind of a bizarre thing to do before going to a gig, Yeah. And then, so we got on the plane, we flew over there. It was Dan Clark is the guy who put it together. Dan's a legendary Hall of Fame speaker, and he's done so much for the military. There was a guy named Dean Kalin. Dean Kalin is the guy who has coached nearly every successful American Idol singer. And then David Archuleta, who was an American Idol, very, very popular singer who almost won it one year. So it was the 4 of us that went on this tour. Dan, David, Dean, and Jason. And we went for nearly a month, and we were performing and speaking and doing music and comedy and motivation and inspiration, whether it was in the hospitals there or the kitchens, the mechanic's office, to the big stages at night that you see on the movies, the old Apocalypse Now and stuff where they show the performers out there. We had that experience. We were only in danger one time where we were flying over the mountains in Afghanistan, and they said that's where Al-Qaeda practices their target practice, and we were shot at in our Chinook, which is a helicopter, and they returned fire, did a maneuver where we dropped and went up and down so they couldn't hit us. And I mean, man, this was a crazy experience. And wow. to get off the Chinook and to thank the dude with the Darth Vader helmet that had just been firing the machine gun. And I was like, man, thank you, saved our life. And he flips the helmet open, and he's an 18-year-old kid from Arkansas. And he's like, you're welcome, man. We're like, oh my gosh, who is saving our lives? These kids are keeping us safe. They are kids, and they are sacrificing everything for us. It brought my level of respect for the military to a whole other place, not just for those that go, but especially for those that stay back, their families, the parents, the spouses, and the children who are so worried about their loved ones out there. Where the guys out there fighting, the men and the women, they're worried just about their own families. They're keeping us safe. It was the most significant event I've ever done. And yeah, we went to Kuwait, Bahrain, Addis Ababa, Djibouti, all over Afghanistan. And I'll talk about it till the day I die. And if they invited me back, I'd go again. It was unbelievable.
Wow. That's an amazing story. So, I grew up watching Bob Hope, doing all those shows and everything, and thinking how amazing that would be, the opportunity to travel around and entertain people. And, and what was your talk, right? Because you're talking about signature moves, to these young kids in uniform, some of them showing up in full gear, with their guns and everything. What was your talk? How'd you decide what to talk about, what your message was going to be?
Most of the time, Dan Clark would take care of the messaging of motivation and so forth. My job was to just make them laugh.
Okay.
And so I would do any music that I thought would be appropriate, from Guns N' Roses, she got a smile when it's seen the mirror, and I'd do that. And then I'd break into Journey or the Chipmunks, just stupid stuff that they would laugh about. And then David Archuleta would make them cry with his, like a bridge over troubled water. I mean, it was beautiful that we could combine it all. I would share the message of the promise and how we all make a promise to deliver that which we set out to do. And that's what those guys do. I mean, they're keeping a promise at the highest level. I mean, that's kind of how I came up with the message, was partly with that, as well as some other things that happened in my life. But yeah, it was a powerful experience, life changer. And to have these dudes come up to us and say, "You're my hero. Thank you for coming here." And we're like, "You're your hero. You're my hero." And they're like, "No, you're our hero." That's sobering,
Yeah. I mean, whew, that's, I got chills, that's powerful stuff. And, but, I can see where they're coming from, because they're out there doing this and it's their job. You're there. You didn't have to go, right? You risked your life to go out there and serve and inspire these guys. And I mean, that is very, very good job, man. Thanks for your service, Jason. How about that, right? I mean, awesome. Holy cow. So, well, let me ask you about this, because you keep talking about it. I want to bring it up. It's probably going to end up being the title for our interview here, Living the Promise. So where'd that come from?
So the promise came out of this post that I did. I wrote years ago, and it just happened to go viral around the world. Over 100 million people have either read it or shared it or seen it on TV. Wow. But it was just a Facebook post. I was, and it goes like this. I had been walking through Target getting some things, for myself before a trip, some manly things, like beef jerky, sardines, beard oil, that kind of stuff. And I'm racing to the quickest checkout line, and I see one with only 2 people in the line. I look up real quickly. I see a blonde and a brunette, and the blonde, I go, whoa. In my mind, I was like, what a beautiful woman, And then I looked closer and I realized it was my wife. I didn't know that she was at the Target at the very same time in the same line. We hadn't scheduled anything, different cars. She's living her life, I'm living mine. But I titled the post, "I think I cheated on my wife today with my wife." And it went crazy viral, because it's this kind of love story of a man not knowing his wife is at the store, and he sees her, and I just stood there and admired how awesome she is, and independent and beautiful and shines from the inside. And the post kind of just resolved to this effect of saying, we see each other every day, but how do we see each other with fresh eyes and realize the light they are in our lives? And women were sharing this all over the world. They were going crazy. By the time I posted it, before I went to bed, next morning it was already going viral. And it wasn't a video, it was just a writing. Yeah. And eventually my messaging had been, discover your signature moves. And I had written a book called Signature Moves, How to Stand Out in a Sit-Down World. And I had never gained any real traction with this messaging. because it kind of didn't make sense in a way for the corporate market. But when a couple of friends of mine helped me to structure this message and say, dude, you're talking about commitment at the highest level, integrity, ethics, morality, etc. You're the promised guy. And it was kind of this thing where we said, yeah, I guess it's greater than a goal. Why set a goal when we can make a promise? That whole kind of languaging started to come out. And then it became a thing where we melded all the messaging I'd ever done together. So it was like, what's your signature move? Well, your signature move is to magnify that which you've been given, which God blessed you with in your life. Magnifying it is your promise. And so how do you keep your promise to your clients, to the people you work with, to your family, to yourself? And that's how this came about. That's a long answer, but the promise is something I've staked in into the ground and said, this is my messaging. This is what I live anyway. So it works. And I'll tell you, Tim, it's been hard to sell this message to the speaking industry, the corporate planner, because they go, well, why would we want a Hallmark card topic called promise? Like, what's the deal with the promise? And I say, well, let me ask you this. What kind of promises do you make your customers, and how are you keeping them? And they're like, oh, it's just funny. You just have to explain it a little bit. Or what is your promise within your organization to your employees? And are you keeping them? Or are you over-promising and under-delivering? And they're like, oh. So it's taken a few years, but it makes sense now.
That's brilliant. And again, I want to point out, because it's such a great point, because your story is so, I love how you told it, right? Because it's also very revealing for so many people are like, well, Jason, he's accomplished this, he's traveled around the world, he's this Hall of Fame speaker. So of course, he can keep his promises. He can do all these signature moves. He's got all this talent. What about me? And you didn't even come up with that at first. That wasn't even your idea. It was by accident. We always say that preparation plus opportunity equals success, right? Well, you weren't expecting a post to go viral that was going to set a chain of events up into your life, that was going to turn you into this Hallmark speaker, right? And that was, just making millions of women swoon, by, oh my God, this guy's so dreamy. Why don't you read this? And, forwarding them to her husband.
I was the most beloved husband in the world.
Yeah.
And the most hated man by men in the world. The women were like, read this. And the men were like, ah,
Oh, I love it.
Seriously, Tim, for 48 hours, I was trending. My name was trending above Kim Kardashian the day she and Kanye West had a baby. Like, it was my 15 minutes of fame. It was hilarious, and people loved it. And then the Scorpions came out and attacked it. And I was on, they were talking about me on The View. They were talking about it on the Today Show. It was the front page news on every news station. It created a conversation of, what is the promise of a man to his loved one? And unfortunately, that's a big problem in this world, and it has been for centuries. So I think I'm happy to be that guy to be like, hey, what is your promise? And how are you keeping it?
Yeah, it's so powerful, even though it might seem so simple, it's not. Because in this world where we're full of insecurity, we're full of feeling like we're not enough. So we overcompensate with greed or ambition or significance, or just covering our own assets all the time, to think about, hey, what is my promise? And not just my promise that's going to serve me. How is my promise going to serve those around me? Right. And I mean, there's so many layers to it. It's a powerful question. People are going to get uncomfortable. It needs to be asked anyway. Right. And then it gives people who are ready for that, because a lot of people aren't going to be ready for that, but there are those who are. And you just give them exactly what they need to be able to give their life a new sense of purpose, a new sense of meaning, a new sense of passion. And that's exciting. So yeah, that's wild. What a trip.
Well, what's interesting is that when these corporate meeting planners or meeting professionals contact me, and they say, this seems too much like a self-help or a improvement kind of a message. We need a leadership message. How do you deliver that as a speaker at a leadership conference in front of 10,000 people, let's say, as the opening keynote?
Yeah.
I just say, it's very simple. I couch it under the premise of saying that every performer, we're all performers. In our jobs, we're based on performance. We all have to do a performance. And so let's look at some of the legends of performance. And I'll do some of my impressions. I'll do Stevie Wonder, or I'll do the Motown's Temptations. And then I'll do the Bee Gees and some funny ones that everyone's laughing. And I say, imagine if those guys came to the stage and they didn't sing their hits. Imagine if they didn't give their all that night. Imagine if they didn't sound like you expected from the record. You would be disappointed. That would be a broken promise from a performer to you as an audience. Now the question is, what kind of promises have you made to your audience, and are you keeping them or breaking them even unknowingly? And then we go into that whole concept of leadership. How are we leaders that make and keep promises, etc.? And it works very nicely because it's obviously very entertaining. And then it's what a lot of people have said, it's stealth philosophy. They didn't see it coming. And it's a cool way to package it.
Well, that's exactly what it is. Because sometimes you know exactly what people need, but that's not what they want to buy. And so you got to give them what they think they want, right? And then deliver the stealth, promise. And so it's just so funny that people would make a distinction that we want leadership, we don't want personal development.
I know.
What? I think maybe you need me more than you think, right? Because that's exactly what it is. It's personal growth. It's emotional intelligence. It is self-help, right? It's learning how to, think differently than you already are, right? And have the desire to want to be better than you already are. And to want to be others focused and all that good stuff. So my signature move, one of them is being able to see these unconscious beliefs and biases. I can see them in people, almost immediately because I've done 15,000 sessions, right? I sit down for decades listening to people, watching people. So I know what's going on inside of them way faster than they do. And it is funny because if I show up and I say, I want to do a program on unconscious beliefs, nobody knows what that means. Right? No, that's like I don't know what that means. I don't know what's that have to do with leadership? And they kind of have the idea, but they don't realize how essential it really is because you can't fix what you don't know. So I love how you've articulated that and how you've honed in. For everybody that's listening, you can tell that Jason is an expert at what he does because these off the cuff expressions and answers and the way that he's providing the answers to my questions, or what he would say to somebody who's going to bring him in for an event, it's so polished. It's so smooth. That only happens because you've been refining it and practicing it over and over and over and over for a long, long time.
Yeah, and let me divulge to your audience the truth of the matter. I get asked or have my dates held by bureaus, and bureaus are those that are hired, by the client to bring in speaker ideas. And I had last week 12 or 14 bureau holds fell off my calendar. They all canceled on me. And the reason I'm sharing that is because even at the level I'm at, which is I've been given awards and I'm considered one of the top in the industry in a lot of ways as a keynote speaker, I'm losing way more gigs than I get. I'm having opportunities set on my calendar, looking forward to it, and boom, it's gone in one instant. It was a Monday, and all these washed out because we followed up and said, hey, are they going to have me? No. Boom, 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 boom. Now, that could deter me if I'm just simply saying, everyone should just listen to my message and accept it, et cetera, et cetera. But what that does to me is it says what you just said to me. How polished are you? How capable are you at answering the question? what are you really delivering? So I'm constantly refining my ability to sell it and to say it so that they go, oh yeah, he is the guy we need. And Tim, I'm still years away from being the guy that everyone thinks they need. I'm only doing 50 events a year, and that's the only way I make a living. I don't have book sales right now. I don't have online courses that are making millions of dollars. My money comes from being on a stage. And so being good at answering the question or giving the message, perfecting the craft, keeping my promise to it, it's nice to be turned down by that many events to say, what am I not doing enough to make it so that I need to get better? And I'm grateful for that.
Oh, I'm so proud of you right now. I'm giving you a big, giant virtual hug because that is just so awesome, right? So many people talk about the successes that they have, and to be so honest and so vulnerable. I mean, that was just outstanding, right? Because what you just did there is you inspired everybody. You're hilarious. You got all this natural ability and everything, but you just got so real in the moment, and that's why people love you, right? That's why people are so connected with you, because it's not just the entertainment. Everybody says you're funny, everybody says how entertaining you are, but that's only half of what they say. The other half is how they've been moved, right? How emotionally they felt moved by you. And that is that's you stealth, doing the show, but to really touch their hearts with the message that you have. And you just demonstrated right there, Jason, by being honest and saying, yeah, 14 gigs, all gone, and it was kind of funny when you're like, I only got 50 gigs. I mean, that's a lot. That is a lot. There's very few people on this planet that, will have, 100 days or 200 days, unless they're hustling in other ways, with multiple streams. So yeah, I will tell you though, that there are millions of dollars you're probably leaving on the table that I'd love to talk with you on another conversation about how I could help you with that, because I already have like 10 different things that would be super easy for you, that would be multiple income while you're sleeping at night with your beautiful wife, right? You guys are sleeping and money's coming in, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. You got so much that you have that, so that'll be another conversation.
All right. I'll hire you for that, man.
Yeah. Because people need what you have more than when you're on the stage with them, right? Yeah. You have so much that, now this is how we're going to live the promise, and this is how we're going to show up on a daily basis with the promise. And so I got lots of ideas for you. So cool. Anyway, so let me ask you this last question. I would keep you on here for days because I'm having so much fun, but I know we got to be aware of your time. So let me ask you this. Based on the experiences that you've had through your life, right, all the way to where you are right now, if you could go back and have a conversation with that kid that was funny, with the big mouth, that kid on the bus stop, the little Jason that you once were, what advice would you go back and tell him?
That's interesting. I would say, you're going to do exactly what God wants you to do as long as you live the way that you need to live. And the most important thing you need to understand is that with the hard things that come along, such as the girls denying you the dates, or the grades that don't come home with an A and a B and a C, and,
that's funny.
and even though you're going to be repeating 9th grade for your first encore performance,
we're bringing him back. We love this guy.
The fact is this: as long as you will trust God's hand in your life, as long as you will discover your mission for your life, it'll all turn out. Because I remember, my mom reminded me of this. When I asked her recently, I said, at what point did you think I was going to become what I've become? And she said, when you were like 7 or 8 years old, you used to pace around the kitchen counter with your head in your hands saying, I have no idea what I'm going to do for a living someday. And I don't know how I'm going to make money, because all I do is these stupid faces and voices. And she said, you would pace around the counter for years, even when you were little, all the way till you were about 19. And she said, it's interesting to me to see that you worried so much about that, but that all you've done is take everything that you naturally did well and turn it into your living. I had no schooling outside of high school. And it was just a matter of stepping into the river that God sends us down if we're willing to take the main vein and not just those tributaries and streams that break off, wondering if that's where we should be flowing. And I'm so grateful that I was able to step into that flow. And I would tell that little kid that, just step in the flow, man. You got this.
Wow, that is awesome. I love that. So, all right. So that was really good. So I have, my youngest Aiden, he's 11, and he's a little actor. He's been in a lot of musicals, and now he's doing auditions for bigger movies and TV and things like that. And he's just a really funny kid. And he's always making these faces and making all these and doing really funny stuff, but he doesn't do it online, or he won't do it with his friends. It's just for us. It's like the funniest guy I've ever seen, but he won't show anybody else it. And it's hilarious. And I'm going to have him listen to this and watch what you just said, right? I'm going to actually sit my kid down and have him learn from you. So I want to appreciate, or thank you for that, because I really appreciate it. I mean, that's awesome.
That's a huge honor. And I'll just tell him right now, you have to be willing to share it. God gave you the gift. That's where we talk about identify, clarify, magnify. The magnify step is make sure to embrace that which makes you who you are. Make sure to own it. You have to own what you've got and then leverage the heck out of it. Every reason I've succeeded in my life is because I have leveraged what I've got, and I've used it to the nth degree to make people laugh, to make them smile, to open their hearts and their minds, and then I can plant the message of the promise into their hearts so they can go out and do the same. And it's all about magnifying it once you identify and clarify it. So I hope your son will do that, because it's scary. You're worried what people are going to say. The comments are hurtful. There's no question. But I think the more hurtful comments I get, the more right I'm doing. And so I go for that. I go for polarizing, where I used to go for white bread. I wanted to please everybody. And now I'm saying, I don't really care what you think. This is my mission. Here it comes. Watch out.
Which makes the people who love you even more. And that's what you want, right? As you build your community of promise keepers, right? And people who are out there believing and loving what you do. That's exactly what we have to do. I love it. I just love what you said. And it's so important, because we hold ourselves back. We often think that it's others that are holding us back, but at the end of the day, it's us. And so when we stop judging ourselves so harshly, we won't care about the judgment of others. In fact, when you start judging yourself in a loving, accepting, positive, empowering way, you'll start to think that other people are going to do that for you as well, which will allow you to magnify even more. And, that is it always comes back to, what are we doing? And what's the promise that you are making to yourself, right? So I think that, so many people are afraid of, just dying. I'm afraid of not living fully. And your promise gives you the format and the way to do that. It gives you the roadmap, so to speak. So
beautiful. Good
yes.
job.
So everybody go to jasonhewlett.com. He's starving. He only has 50 bookings. We need to get this guy some food on his table. So if you could go to Jason Hewlett, share with your friends, your colleagues, your neighbors, take it to your CEO and say, we have to bring this guy in. There's no other options. We're bringing in Jason. So jasonhewlett.com. We'll have the links in the show notes. This has just been one of my favorite interviews. I really love everything that you shared with us today. Is there any final comment or anything else that you want to share before we go?
Tim, I have been working for years trying to figure out how to write the book called The Promise, because I wanted to have everything in it, from the promise to the audience, the family, the one, everything. We decided to go for The Promise to the One as the first book in a series that will be coming out in 2020.
Yeah.
So if your audience will watch for that, I think it's going to be a significant writing, and hopefully it's something that will inspire your listeners and those that are watching. But I just want to say one more quick thought, in the sense of, if you're sitting there wondering, can I step into it? Can I go for it? Just remember that you have talents that I don't have, and I have talents you don't want. And so I want you to, I want you to go out and share what you naturally have, the skill sets that you've created. That is your signature move, and your promise is to utilize it, whether it's in leadership, whether it's as a parent, whether it's as a kid at school, making a difference for those that will be influenced by your incredible life. Do not hold back on your promise, and you'll make a difference.
Oh, outstanding. So we will definitely be looking for that book when it comes out, and the series of books, because you have so much inside of you. You've got to get it out. I'm glad you did the series. That's really, really smart, because a book should really just have one good nugget and then a step for how you pull it off. And then it doesn't need to be 250 pages anymore, 300 pages. Just give us the one nugget and then give us step 2. But we got to do step 1 first. And so I love that. So when that book comes out, let me know. We'll have you back on. We'll promote it. We'll get it out there, because everybody should have a promise and everybody should have a copy of that book. Jason Hewlett, everybody, thanks so much for being on the program today, Jason. I appreciate you. And for everybody that's listening, thanks so much for being a part of this. We really appreciate you. Without you, this show doesn't matter. So thanks for being mesmerizing, and we'll see you next time. Make today a sheer success, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Hey, would you like more free tips on how to be a mesmerizing leader? Then check out mesmerizingleadership.com, and also hang out with me on Facebook, facebook.com/Tim Shurr. Thanks so much, and make your